Hello and welcome to Top Shelf Books. If you're joining us for the first time, we are hopefully going to add some new books to your TBR, maybe familiar favorites, maybe something off the beaten path. If you want to see what I'm reading, you can always come visit me at Books and Piles on Tumblr. We are taking a slightly different tack in this episode, so welcome to episode 7. We are going to be doing a literary horoscope or a book horoscope. My sister suggested this to me, and she is one of my favorite people to share books with. I suspect that what I've created is an abomination and not what she was planning on at all, so we'll see how it goes, but we will be giving you your book forecast, Scorpios. If you are not a Scorpio, stick with us anyway to hopefully find something new and different to read. Because this is my first book horoscope, I do want to talk about the zodiac just for a moment, and I can't think about the zodiac without thinking of Dirty Harry because I'm an Andrew Robinson fan. So that led me to thinking about the Zodiac Killer. So I'm including Zodiac by Grace Smith as one of your suggestions for today. Not that it really has anything to do with you Scorpios, but just because it is an interesting read and kind of the starting place for that particular case if you are interested in true crime. I also want to recommend A Scheme of Heaven by Boxer, and this looks at the history of the zodiac and how we have used it in the past, how we use it today. If you follow, different lists and kind of the sort of quizzes online. There are all sorts of things that people attribute to the zodiac for fun. And of course, this particular bookcast is for fun. All of this is very scientific, my horoscope reading here. If you're familiar with the Weird Al song about horoscopes, this is exactly that scientific. So just know that this is going to dictate the outcome of your year, Scorpios. And to begin, I wanted to mention a book that has Scorpio in the title. It just felt like the place to start. So, The Scorpio Races by Steve Vader. This one spawned a lot of imitators in YA, so it's quite popular. Not necessarily anything to do with your particular horoscope, but I felt like we had to start with the mention at least. Scorpios, you have one of the cooler symbols in the zodiac with the scorpion. So I did want to start out also with some books about scorpions, which are surprisingly difficult to find. So I am including The Life of the Scorpion by Fabra. And he has several books that look into the natural history, the life cycle of particular insects like the glowworm. So I really recommend him. The books generally are out of print at this point, but you can find them pretty cheaply. Also going to recommend to you Spiders, Scorpions, Centipedes, and Mites by Cloudsley Thomas. It's older, but it's a very good work of natural history. If, though, you are made nervous by particular creepy crawlers, you may want to jump around. I stay away from the mites myself. The Scorpion God by Golding has nothing to do with scorpions in particular, but I just like to recommend some more William Golding to you. I mean, things feel kind of dystopian out there, so not Lord of the Flies, but maybe a William Golding you have not encountered. All right, Scorpios, let's get into the wonderful qualities that you possess. Again, this is all completely scientific, and I have researched it rigorously to determine that Scorpios are determined beings. So, if you are wanting to find similar determined folks in literature, I'm going to suggest to you the Odyssey, and I'm going to suggest to you the Emily Wilson translation because there is a wonderful history of women translating the classic text that goes back to the 18th century when uncles, fathers, brothers would educate women because, the system didn't think that we could learn. They thought we were overgrown children. And those educated women were translating the Odyssey in the Iliad. But we have not seen that legacy kind of continue until recently. Now, I will be honest with you, I learned the Odyssey from Fagles. That's the translation I'm most familiar with, so I'm eager to take a look at Wilson's and see if the rosy red fingers of dawn are there over and over again. So you can't get much more determined than the Odyssey. 10 years to get home, right? Another determined character, if you would like to skip the classic literature and go to manga, is Guts from Berserk. He faces obstacles both earthly and demonic and crushes, smashes, destroys them all. Scorpios, in your friend group or your family group, you are probably the person who speaks up first, who speaks up for others. You are naturally inclined to be brave. So I have paired you with some literary characters who exhibit various forms of bravery. Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim by O'Brien, obviously classic children's tale. Cartoon is adorable and also kind of creepy, but Mrs. Frisbee being a little mouse, right? That's a character that we think of as very, very vulnerable, but she still manages to be brave in the face of that. I've included a history book, Sophie Scholl and the White Rose by Dumbach and Newborn. If you're not familiar with Sophie's story, I will warn you that you will be in for some tragedy, some young people facing down fascism and the Nazis. And I think stories like these are especially important right now when so many people are protesting and facing down a great deal of darkness in the world. We do need to remember that people are able to stand up in the face of that, even if the consequences can be terrible. My last choice is Cain at Gettysburg by Peters. This is sort of an unusual choice, but even if you do not care at all about the American Civil War, Peters does a wonderful job of making the war feel real and contemporary and modern. And what I really like that he captures here in terms of bravery is his soldiers can see when their commanders are making mistakes. They can see that they're in danger, and despite this, they do go forward. So it's a bravery that accepts what's going to happen. And sometimes they are terrified, and sometimes they throw up, and sometimes they cry, but they still do what they have come to the battlefield to do. And we're generally, in the book's perspective, it's more on the northern side of things. So we get to see them doing this in the name of other people and the freedom of other individuals. I'm going to be honest with you, Scorpio. This was the hardest slide for me to do, the hardest section of this bookcast. I started looking for honest characters in literature, and I was coming up with nothing. So you are unique and stand out in the crowd, because finding someone honest in literature is quite difficult. So I wanted to include Lying by Sam Harris. In this book, he talks about how we lie to ourselves, why we lie to others, and how we justify it. So you're being honest, Scorpio, but everyone else may not be, so you should know what they're up to. Some other honest characters: Terry Pratchett's Captain Carrot in the City Watch trilogy. I wanted to mention Carrot first because Pratchett is really fun to read, but second, honesty and law enforcement, unfortunately, are not things that we always associate in the modern world. So Carrot is unique both for his honest stance, but he's honest while trying to administer law and order and justice, and that's something that we can use more of in our lives. Phoebe and Her Unicorn by Simpson is geared towards younger audiences, but it very much reminds me of Calvin and Hobbes in the sense that you can definitely enjoy it as an adult. I might have all of the volumes and get each one as they come out because they do bring me such joy. And the character I'm nominating for honesty here is Marigold Heavenly Nostrils, the unicorn. She tells it like it is, and she is a good complement to all the fantasy that's going on. She is the honest voice in the center. For Sherlock Holmes, it's actually Watson who is the honest character, and he gives voice to how things really happen and tries to stick to the facts, even when Holmes would maybe sometimes prefer he did not. So some honest characters to complement your honesty, Scorpio. Not only are you honest, you are loyal. Your friends know that you will stand by them. Your partners know that you will be there for them. So some literary characters that exemplify this excellent trait of yours: I wanted to include a graphic novel, so Batman Allies, that focuses on Alfred Pennyworth. We're often in novels and movies placed in the hero's perspective and their point of view, and we don't think about the people that have to take care of the hero and stand at their side and loyally show up, even when they might know that the hero is making mistakes. And maybe you have played this role for someone in your life, Scorpio. So I thought Alfred was a good choice. Samwise from Lord of the Rings. I consider Lord of the Rings to be Samwise's book, basically, and you can't get any more loyal than that. He is the epitome of loyalty in literature, as far as I'm concerned. And George Eliot's Middlemarch, I want to mention Mary. She's one of my favorite characters, and I'll be honest with you, I probably could have put Middlemarch, and I could have found a character for every quality, but I promise not to torment you by doing that. But Mary is loyal to her family and their best interest, even when they are not in her best interest. She's loyal to her employer, even though he is horrible to her and tries to bribe her. So I thought that she was a good example for us to look up to. And if you have not read Middlemarch, let me recommend it to you as something fun to get lost in terms of found family and community and lots of gossip. All right, Scorpio, I would never suggest that you have negative qualities. I would not do such a thing. But if you have spent any time with the zodiac, you will find that they are, when you're looking at a particular sign, it does tend to give you good qualities as well as qualities that maybe are not always desirable. I'm going to argue that we can usually use them in desirable ways. It just depends on our personal way of going about things. So when it comes to ambition, you are an ambitious type, Scorpio. Some literary characters that you may not want to follow in the footsteps of Satan in Paradise Lost. I'll be honest with you, I root for him. Milton does just a really good job of giving us a sympathetic Satan. Macbeth, obviously, in Shakespeare, he's after that crown and his ambition trips him up along the way. A character whose ambition is maybe a little bit more admirable, Velvet Bow in the Dream Quest of Velvet Bow. So, for one thing, our main character here is middle-aged, which is refreshing for sci-fi fantasy. For another, she's academically ambitious, but she's also ambitious to help her students. So, kind of a different type of ambition and maybe unexpected. I've also included nonfiction The Broken Ladder by Keith Payne. This is a wonderful book in the sense that it shows that, sorry, there are cats crashing around as I record to you. I'm not sure they're ambitious to be included in this recording. In The Broken Ladder, we are shown that all of us, no matter how ambitious we are, we come to the playing field with certain advantages or certain disadvantages based on the jobs that we take, the economic situations that we are born into, and all of these things can curtail what we may be able to accomplish. All right, Scorpio, I want you to picture an actual scorpion. When I picture scorpions, they're always sort of in the shadow with their tail and their stinger rays kind of hidden. And this kind of exemplifies the secrecy that can be part of the Scorpio personality. So I've given you some books here that deal with characters who do not always show all of their cards or play their cards close to the vest. So The Eye of the World right now is being obviously televised as well as a novel. And Moraine is a character who is very secretive. She has different faces for her friends and for the people close to her, and she has no problem manipulating people. In Nancy Farmer's The House of the Scorpion, conveniently has a scorpion in the title as well, the main character is trying to figure out the secrets that surround their own identity. So that one's a little bit different. And finally, two that deal with disguises. Ellen Wood's East Lynne is a sensation novel. In Victorian England, sensation novels were meant to create intense emotions in the reader. Sadness, joy, exclamations. We've all read a book and, dropped it or said something out loud. That was what the sensation novel was supposed to do. sort of like today's melodrama on television. And in this book, the main character takes on a disguise to enter a household. Another great disguise novel, Peretz's The Swedish Cavalier, which to me conjures up some of Dumas' Three Musketeers, has similar things, but the disguise in it is pretty wonderful. I would not say that this is solely a Scorpio trait. We all at different times feel resentment over various things, but Scorpios, apparently, this is part of your character. So, Iago from Othello is a great character for resentment. His resentment drives the entire play, in fact. And I did tell you I could get Middlemarch in here again. So it's back, George Eliot's Middlemarch. And this time I want to mention Casaubon, Dorothea's husband. What I really love about Casaubon is, for one, he doesn't resent people for what's happening to them in the moment. He actually resents people for their potential futures. And that's a lot of resentment to carry around when you are imagining people's happiness that you will not be part of and you're upset about it. What's even cooler is Eliot makes us sympathize with him despite this character flaw. Okay, Scorpio, for this particular set of books, I'm going to have to ask your pardon and say that you certainly would not resemble any of these characters. I was thinking about control and characters that really exemplify what it is to exert control on others. And I ended up in history. So Stalin, Kotkin has 2 volumes out now covering Stalin's life. You can't get much more controlling. Of course, I'm not comparing you to a dictator, but if you want to read about a dictator exerting control, this is a really good recent publication. I've been listening to the audiobook, and so much control being exerted over a vast amount of territory and people, often to their detriment, right? Another example of control, The Girls by Emma Cline. This one we have the influence of peer pressure of a cult, basically, and thinking about how we can get drawn into those things. You can be stubborn, Scorpios. I personally think stubbornness can be a great quality because sometimes you have to marshal that stubbornness to deal with the various things that life throws at you, right? So some examples of stubbornness, if you want one from history, No Surrender by Onoda. Refused to give up despite the fact that war had been declared over, and his government eventually has to go to him and say, you need to stand down. So maybe we don't need to be that stubborn. And then I apologize for not going off the beaten path here, but I couldn't resist including Moby Dick by Melville, not just for Ahab and his stubbornness in following the whale, but the stubbornness of the folks with him. And of course, we can make excuses. We can say, well, they're employed by him, they're on a ship. It's not like they can just get off of the ship. But I do think there is something that overtakes the entire crew when it comes to this whale. It's not just Ahab. They are in this too, to see this fight between man and whale and stubbornly sticking to it, literally to the end of things. All right, Scorpio, we've come to the part that I know that you are here for, which is your 2024 predictions that I have come across on the internet with great scientific accuracy, as I promised you. So, according to the interwebs and its wealth of knowledge and the very stars, this is your year for wealth. So, hopefully, you will need to be looking at The Very Rich by Thorndike and just seeing how you are going to live and remembering perhaps your favorite Bookcast and thinking maybe I want to send that person an Amazon gift card. Wouldn't that be lovely? Also, you're supposed to travel, possibly to exotic locations. So maybe pick up How Not to Travel the World by Jula. She's talking about backpacking through various places and her adventures and misadventures. Not wishing you any misadventures, Scorpios. And the really cool part about your 2024, according to the stars and all their wisdom, is that this is the year for elders in your life, whether they are family, found family, chosen family, friends, people at work, they are going to impart to you their great wisdom and become part of the legacy that you are creating in the world. So I wanted to introduce you to some wonderful characters who are advanced in their lives and their circumstances. So Major Pettigrew's Last Stand by Simonson. Not only are these characters older, this is an adorable romance, so I recommend it for the cuteness factor as well. Shatner Shalomi's From Aging to Saging. All of us are getting older every day, unfortunately. This may not be something that's on your radar right now, but you may be thinking about the people in your life that are becoming the sages that are going to help guide you. I love Mark Halperin. You will hear about him again, so I recommend to you A Soldier of the Great War, in which an older character is looking back on his life and trying to glean wisdom from it to help a younger character move forward. The Housekeeper and the Professor by Ogawa. In this case, the professor is struggling with some mental decline. The housekeeper is helping him to see things afresh and to find hope. I suspect this is a preview of my older years, except I will be too poor to have a housekeeper. That got depressing. Moving on. So Mr. Loverman by Evaristo. I put this book in people's hands when I get the opportunity. It is a lovely book in terms of inclusiveness. It grapples with the difficulty of relationships and different types of love. So a character who has both had a marriage and children, but has had a love with his best friend for his whole life. So what is his legacy ultimately going to be? Which part of his legacy is true? What is he passing on? All right, Scorpios, we have reached the end. So here are today's titles. I have probably forgotten something wonderful, so please feel free to send it my way. I am wishing you the very best end of 2023 and something good into 2024. And of course, as part of that, wishing you many wonderful books to read. Some more titles for today, and your reminder to support your local library, your indie booksellers, your local booksellers if you are fortunate enough to have them. Also, your reminder that I am always looking for new topics. I would love to hear about what you would like to hear about, what you would like to read. If it's not something that you even want to turn into a whole episode or a whole discussion, but you just want to know if there are some good books out there about it, let me know. I will be happy to dig around and see what I can find for you. The final list of our books for today for our Scorpios. Again, wishing you a wonderful end of 2023, beginning of 2024. No Scorpions were harmed in the making of this bookcast. As always, thank you so much for spending some time with me, letting me into your world via this little bookcast. I do look forward to hearing from you about any books that you want added to the list, any books you're curious about, any thoughts for anything that I missed. You can reach me at navallianlibrary@gmail.com. Wishing you a wonderful rest of your week.